Mama, I'm a criminal. Mama, I'm a criminal.
Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As always, my name is Anna and welcome back to another True Crime Tuesdays. And today we are actually going to be getting into the murder of Adrian Jones. So if you like true crime, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and let's go ahead and get started. Adrian Alexander Jones was born May 15th, 2008. This sweet little innocent child was only 3 years younger than Gabriel Fernandez, but unfortunately, he would meet the same fate. Being born to Dana Pierce and Michael Jones, and having 3 sisters, Kiana Doctor, Madison Jones, and Tisa Jones, and 2 brothers, Terrell Haynes and Hayden Haynes. Adrian would live with his mom, Dana. That was until August of 2011, when Kansas Department for Child and Family, or Kansas's DCS, would receive a call that Adrian was left alone by his mother. Around this time, he would have been about 2.5 years old. As a result of this, his mother would lose custody and Adrian would go to live with his father, Michael Jones, and his wife, Heather Jones. They were given custody of Adrian. And unfortunately, like we've seen before, this would be the beginning of the end of this child's life. Why does it always stop parents? Within 4 months of Adrian being placed with the Jones, calls would already begin. 2 calls were placed in December of 2011, and when it was investigated, it was found that abuse was happening. However, based off of what I've read, I'm thinking what happened was Heather was the only one who was at fault, at least for this incident. So instead of removing Adrian from the home when they knew that there was abuse, what did they do? Kansas City decided that it was a good idea to keep Adrian in the home. All that they would do was have Michael sign an agreement to not have Heather Jones near Adrian. That's all. And this was only since he said that he and Heather weren't living together anymore. But of course, that's not always the case. So within a month of Michael signing this, Michael and Heather would already be back together, and Michael would state that Heather was able to visit his home. How Adrian at that point was not removed, stupidity? I don't know. Because see, Michael violated that agreement because the agreement that he signed said that he was not going to have Heather around Adrian. And what happened? He got back with Heather and now she's around Adrian again. Like, hello. But nonetheless, Michael and Heather would be back together. Now, Michael and Heather would manage to not get any more of these, we'll just call them DCS calls. At least that was until December of 2012. Congratulations. You made it a whole year. This time around, when DCS reviewed, they would still not remove Adrian from the home. Point when DCS in Kansas basically closed the case with the agreement, the Joneses would decide that Kansas wasn't for them anymore and they would move to Kansas City, Missouri. So fast forwarding to March 4th of 2013, the Missouri Department of Social Services, or we'll dub them as Missouri DCS, they would come and visit the home after a call was made. In this claim, It was said that Adrian was being abused and forced to stand in a corner and forgotten about, that he had locks on the outside of his bedroom door, and that Adrian was starting fires, and that the home garage was filled with dead animals. The house itself was filthy and had mice bones and chicken bones. How do they still have any of their children after reading that? How did they manage to keep them? So the next day, Missouri DCS would request for Heather Jones's DCS history from Kansas. And those reports would come in on April 7th of 2013. And it showed a history of Heather Jones not knowing how to supervise her own children or any child. With this information intact, Missouri DCS would determine that it was unsafe for Adrian to remain in the home. So what did DCS do? They started intensive in-home care services. They would also include family-centered services as well. That's all. Now, let's go ahead and fast forward 4 months, and Michael Jones and Heather Jones would inform Missouri DCS that they were no longer going to need their services as they were moving back to Kansas. Well, when Missouri DCS would find out about this, the caseworker that was assigned to the Joneses, she would go ahead and inform the Kansas DCS of the open cases and their concerns for Adrian. So Kansas DCS would call the Jones and would advise the Joneses to just continue living in Missouri. How do they still have this kid? Now, coming to August 21st of 2013, another Missouri DCS call would be made. This time, the claim would be made that Adrian was not being given any health or mental attention, and that Adrian would just be locked in his room at night, and that Adrian was being targeted. That's right, targeted by Heather Jones. When the Joneses were visited by the Missouri DCS for this claim, Heather denied all the accusations and informed the Missouri DCS that they were no longer going to be requiring their services since they were moving to Kansas. Moving on to February 25th, 2014, Adrian is somehow still living with these people, and another call comes into DCS in Missouri. What a surprise! Okay, so this time, the claim would be that Adrian was being locked in a room that Michael Jones couldn't provide toward Adrian's mental health, and that Adrian was likely to be abused and or neglected. While Missouri DCS was investigating, at this point I'm just putting air quotes around investigating. So while Missouri DCS was investigating, they would get in contact with Michael Jones, who would tell them that they were now living in Kansas. So, what does Missouri DCS do? They get on the phone with Kansas DCS to let them know about the allegations that are now coming forward this time around. So, that makes me think that they weren't really living in Kansas yet, like at least full time at that point, because on March 3rd of 2014, a caseworker with the Missouri DCS and local police would visit the Jones home, and they would find them. They would look at Adrian, they would see Adrian, and they would say that he had suspicious marks on his chin and on his forehead. So this time, Adrian would be referred to family guidance centers for placement and mental health services, and he would be placed at Spofford Residential Treatment Center in Grandview, Missouri. And that's exactly where he would stay from March 7th, 2014 until September 4th of 2014. So about a week before Adrian was set to be discharged, Missouri DCS would attempt to reach out to Michael Jones. And this was probably to set up for Adrian coming back home. Can't even call it a home. Coming back to this place with these people and out treatment centers and things like that, like the stuff that they go over with you when you're getting out of any sort of center. And surprise, surprise, Michael Jones would inform them that he was no longer living in Missouri, that he was now living in Kansas. Now, it wasn't just only the Missouri DCS that Michael was dodging. He would also be dodging the Kansas DCS as well. Pretty much is telling them, I don't want this kid. Why are you giving him this kid? This avoidance, though, it wouldn't last long, since Kansas DCS would actually file on behalf of Adrian for child support payments that Michael Jones was being paid by Dana. And in May of 2015, the case would be closed. And considering what would go on to happen, Michael took Adrian in. Let me throw something at you. And I want your answer down in the comments below, please. Let's say that mom got the child taken away because he was left unsupervised. Child was 2.5 years old, left unsupervised. It's all that we know. Dad and stepmom are showing signs of abuse, have multiple cases at this point, have fled to a different state suddenly after a report was filed. So you find that it is not fit for child to be with father, but the goal that DCS claims is that they want to reunite families. Why not give mom a second chance? Why not give mom a second chance who literally, it's been at this point, a year or two? I'm pretty sure she's learned her lesson. Why wasn't mom an option? Why didn't they work with mom the way that they worked with dad? Why didn't they make mom sign an agreement that she wasn't going to leave the kid alone? It makes no sense. Unless someone can show me proof that Dana had multiple DCS cases, why couldn't they work something out? So between 2014 and 2015, more calls would be made, more abuse claims would come in, and more reports that Heather Jones was posting photos on Facebook of Adrian pretty much being abused and tortured. Adrian's remains would be found in Kansas City, Kansas, around November of 2015. And this discovery would be made by Kansas City police. The discovery of Adrian Jones's body is one of the most disturbing discoveries that I have personally ever seen. It's up there with Gabriel. So let's get into it. On November 25th, 2015, Kansas City police were called out to the Joneses' Kansas City home, located at 5201 North 99th Avenue. And this was on a domestic disturbance call. Police would determine that Heather Jones' injuries were consisted with being choked and beaten. She had cuts on her forehead and face and a swollen right eye that was bruised. Heather Jones would tell officers that her and Michael Jones had gotten into a fight in their bedroom because Heather had told Michael that she was leaving him, and that upon hearing the news, Michael began to choke her, and Heather would be able to escape to the living room before Michael followed her and strangled her and even lifted her up by her throat and then dropped her. Heather would go on to say that she managed to get out of the home into the barn when Michael Jones started shooting at her. He did miss, and police would find 2 bullet holes in the barn, corroborating her story. Police would find Michael Jones close to the home at the intersection of 99th Street and Hutton Road. When Michael was found, he was found with 6 of his kids. 7 firearms would also be found in the vehicle, the same vehicle that these children are in. And they would also find $3,000 in cash. While police were talking to Heather, she would tell them that 7-year-old Adrian Jones had died back in September 8th, 2015, to be exact, and that Michael Jones had disposed of the body on the property to hide the death and the abuse that Adrian was put through. The next day, a search warrant would be executed on the property to try and locate the remains, and remains consistent with that of a 7-year-old boy were discovered. After collecting the remains, an autopsy would be performed. While investigating, detectives would also discover that Heather Jones was an avid Facebook user and that she belonged to a Facebook group titled Fuck Everyone Else, where she would post some very gross posts. For example, one post made on Christmas Day, 2014. I'm going to read it as follows. Heather would post, "I have a psychopath I'm giving away for free today. He broke out last night and fucked my kitchen and everything I had baked up. I'm beyond pissed, and he's running laps around my pool and doing push-ups till I'm tired, unless someone wants him." She would reply to a comment saying, "I can't shoot him, unfortunately, but I can work the shit out of him till I feel better. And Merry Christmas to you too." The name was redacted. "I'm so beyond done with this kid. Last night he chased me with a fucking kitchen knife trying to stab me till I jumped the counter in pain and tackled his ass. Redacted. Y'all sure you don't want him? I'll pay child support." I'm getting mad. Seriously, he's a real psychopath. I'm so not kidding. Every day with this child is like being on guard in a prison yard. His bio mom fucked this kid up, like seriously. He kills everything he comes in contact with and has to be restrained 95% of the time. There would be a reply from a person. That person's name, of course, was redacted, but they did say, "Heather, is he the push-up kid? LMFAO from your security camera." I was like, WTF is that? LMAO, poor kid, and God bless you for taking him in. Then there would be another comment that goes as follows. "Merry Christmas, but I can't take him in. Redacted would have no problem pulling a redacted and having him look at the flowers." Someone else would reply to this comment saying, "The flowers in the attic, redacted, LMAO." To which Heather would reply, Walking Dead, look at the pretty flowers. Yeah, I'm about to pull that shit. Again, not even 8 minutes ago, he flipped my 4-month-old out her bassinet while I peed. So what they are referring to with the look at the flowers, if you didn't catch it, it's from Walking Dead. I personally have never seen that show. Honestly, I tried. I couldn't get past the first episode. I don't know why. Apparently, in this episode, a character named Carol kills another character named Lizzie. And I'm not sure why she tries to kill her. I think I read something about she found that she couldn't, like, trust her or something like that. Something, if you know, can you let me know, please? But apparently she takes her into like a field of flowers and tells her, look at the flowers, while she shoots her in the head and kills her. I saw the video clip, but it was like a little girl, so that's why I got confused as to like, why are you doing this to a child? But it made the reference more understandable. 3 days later, on December 28th, 2014, Heather replied to a photo that was posted in the group, and her reply on this photo is, scared to look at my phone, afraid I might be the next redacted, and have to feed some pigs a body. I do believe that a lot of these messages and photos and videos that would later become evidence in this case would not have been possible had it not been for Heather Jones's stupidity, because Heather Jones had a landlady, and when Heather Jones got, I guess, like scared or whatever, I don't know. I don't try to understand psychopaths' minds. But Heather Jones basically gave her landlady her passwords to everything through phone calls, through letters. She gave her passwords to her iCloud account and wanted her to basically like download everything. And when this woman saw what she saw, she gave it to police. She did the right thing. And that's what gave them the evidence. Many photos would be discovered of Adrian showing his little body depleting and slowly dying. He would be left in a shower in which Michael Jones boarded up, and he was forced to be there, naked, alone, and strapped to a chair. He would not be allowed out, not even to use the bathroom or to eat. Adrian would also be subject to getting kicked into an empty swimming pool by Michael Jones. He would receive gashes on his body. He would get stunned with stun guns. This boy would be starved and tortured. I saw a video of where he had to stand neck deep in a pool, and another where he is bloodied right here, going down, like you can see blood going down his face. Adrian Jones, no matter his medical condition, because Adrian Jones was suspected of being like a schizophrenic from what I had read. I don't believe if it was ever actually completely diagnosed, but I did read. And the only reason why I bring it up now is because it doesn't matter if a child has a disability. It doesn't matter if a child has a mental illness. It doesn't matter if the child has a physical illness. Children are off limits. In his final days, Adrian would be just strapped to a chair, sitting in the shower stall, naked, alone, scared, trying to get help. I read that he was screaming into like the air vent, help me, I'm dying, or I'm going to die. No one helped him. Heather Jones, I believe, replied with like, suck it up or something like that. Like, these people have no souls. On September 8th, 2015, Adrian Jones would succumb to his torture and pass away. When Heather and Michael discovered the body, they still left it there in the shower stall for weeks. During this time, Michael Jones was making arrangements to buy 3 pigs. After purchasing these pigs, they would starve the pigs. After they starved the pigs, they proceeded to feed Adrian Jones's body to the 3 pigs. Michael Jones would then proceed to take the little remains of Adrian and put them into a tub and put a lid on that tub and keep that tub in the barn, that same barn where those pigs were, the same pigs that ate his body. Michael and Heather Jones would be arrested and charged with first-degree murder and child abuse. In 2016, they would both be sentenced. Heather was sentenced to 5 years and 8 months for the charge of child abuse, and they would both receive life sentences with possibility of parole after 25 years for the murder of Adrian Jones. They will become eligible for parole in 2041. As for Dana, Adrian's mom, she would go on to file a wrongful death lawsuit against the social workers in Missouri. The saddest part about this case for me, aside from the fact that this little boy met torture at the end of his little life, is the fact that when I was researching this case, I would look up his name and I had to decipher, I had to really look to make sure that it was him that these news articles were speaking about. But when I typed in boy fed to pigs, he was there. Everything, every link was him. His name wasn't boy fed with pigs. His name was Adrian Jones. Adrian shouldn't be known for how his life ended. He should be known for that beautiful smile. He shouldn't be known as the boy who was fed to pigs. So disrespectful, in my opinion. That is the case of the murder of Adrian Jones. So what's your opinion on the case? Do you think life with parole was a decent sentence? Do you think that if Heather hadn't gotten mad and they hadn't gotten into that fight, that we would have probably ever found out about this? Because it seems like DCS on either side didn't really care. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below. And again, if you enjoy true crime, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, like the video, and have a great rest of your Tuesday. And I'll see you all soon. Bye.
Mama, I'm a criminal. Mama, I'm a